Welcome to Devon and Cornwall Microsoft Power BI User Group. We have the amazing Daniel Otykier joining us today, who is the original creator and Chief Technical Officer of Tabular Editor 3. Following sessions are coming up. I won't go through all of them, but we've got some amazing speakers from all sorts of areas of Power BI and Fabric environment. So I just want to remind you all, SQL Bits is happening in March. It's a fabulous conference. You just learn so much, but not only the technical content that you learn, you get to meet and make friends with lots of different people. So it's a great conference to attend if you're in the UK or if you can fly over. It's really good. So what I'm going to do without any further ado, Daniel, is I'm going to hand over to you so you can start the session on Tabular Editor. And I forgot to ask, do you want me to ask questions at set points or wait to the end?
No, it's fine. I have the chat. I'm monitoring on a separate display, so all good. I'll just take questions as they come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Sue. So this session is titled Tabular Editor 3, Semantic Modeling at Warp Speed. So the session will be primarily around Tabular Editor 3. I will also point out some of the differences between Tabular Editor 2 and Tabular Editor 3, but it mostly serves as a session to show you how Tabular Editor 3 can help you become even more productive when you're building your semantic models. And if you probably already noticed, some of you, that we have this little space theme going on. That's why we use terms like warp speed, and we have these three little aliens that you see on the screen. Later in my demo, you will see that I'm using a special demo dataset called the space parts dataset, and that's because these three guys that you see on the screen here, they work for a company called Space Parts Incorporated that sell and service spaceships in outer space. So we love everything related to space, and that kind of shines through with all of the material that we have. So more on that later. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, short slide here about myself. My name is Daniel Otykier. I'm the CTO of Tabular Editor APS, and I'm also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and Power BI contributor. So if any of you have ever seen the little external tools ribbon that pops up in Power BI Desktop when you install one of the many external tools from the community, then just know that I actually created that in Redmond a couple of years ago. So by doing that, I earned the title of Power BI contributor, and I'm actually pretty proud of that. So I'm not employed or even affiliated with Microsoft, but I still was allowed to come over and help them build a little piece of Power BI Desktop. And for that, I'm actually pretty kind of proud. I think that's pretty nice. So anyway, our company is Tabular Editor APS. It is based in Denmark, where I also live, and it was founded in 2021. We have a small, very dedicated team of people working on this. We have a few developers. We have a PM who's doing an excellent job, also moderating our GitHub community site and offering all kinds of support. We have commercial people working. So this has turned into a full-blown thing nowadays, whereas previously it was just myself working in my spare time on this as a hobby project, but now it's actually my full-time job. And Tabular Editor, the company, is part of a larger conglomerate in Denmark called 2Day that also deals in a lot of consulting businesses and other types of software companies. So what exactly is Tabular Editor? Well, to sum it up, it's an offline semantic model editor that works with different flavors of analysis services tabular. So of course, going back to the on-premise environment, we have a SQL Server analysis services starting from SQL Server 2016. In fact, originally Tabular Editor was created with SQL Server analysis services in mind, and then came also Azure analysis services. I think that came out in 2017, and later on we got support for Power BI Desktop and also Power BI Premium through the XML endpoint. And these days, Fabric, as you know, is all the rage. And of course, since when you connect through the so-called XML endpoint, you are in reality connecting to an instance of analysis services hosted by Microsoft in their Fabric environment. So for that reason, Tabular Editor also works with Fabric. Basically all 5 of these options are the same thing at the end of the day. It's just analysis services tabular running the semantic model engine. That's where you have your semantic models hosted with all of their DAX expressions and the Vertipack in-memory storage engine for compression. All of that is just, as I said, different flavors of analysis services, and Tabular Editor can be used in conjunction with all of them. So as Sue said initially, we have 2 versions of Tabular Editor available. There's Tabular Editor 2, which is free and open source. You can find it on GitHub, download it. It's just a 5 megabyte download, very small, very lightweight. And then you can start working with it right away. And then we also have Tabular Editor 3, which is the commercial option, where we do offer a free 30-day trial. Both of the versions can be downloaded through our website. And as I said before, I will try to focus my session on mostly on Tabular Editor 3 because it has the sort of the nicest features to show off. Right. So why would you even care about these products? Well, there are several advantages, and I'm sure if you've ever seen some of Sue's other sessions, then you've probably already seen some of the benefits that Tabular Editor provides. First and foremost, I would say speed and productivity is where it's at. So we've probably all encountered the little working on it spinner in Power BI Desktop whenever you make a change to a model, like adding a measure or changing a format string or something like that. Well, Tabular Editor doesn't have the working on it spinner. It just works instantly and lets you make changes to the semantic model. You can even batch changes, make multiple changes. You can copy paste stuff, undo, redo. So in general, if you're spending a lot of time building your semantic models, then Tabular Editor can help speed that up tremendously. Tabular Editor also unlocks some more advanced features inside the semantic modeling engine. So it used to be the case that you couldn't create calculation groups unless you used Tabular Editor. Now that has luckily been changed. So I believe it was back in October last year where Microsoft shipped this feature in Power BI Desktop. But that's a relatively recent feature, even though calculation groups have been available inside the modeling engine for several years. But there are still other features, other things that you will need Tabular Editor in order to access. So that could be things like metadata translations, perspectives, and did they add OLS, object level security, to Power BI Desktop? I don't remember whether that's possible to do or not yet. I know at least at some point that was also one of the things that you had to add using Tabular Editor. But you will see in the demo these sort of advanced modeling features, what they are. I will show you a few examples of them as well. Now, one other benefit of Tabular Editor, in my opinion, is the ability to work offline, meaning you don't need any connection to analysis services at all. You can simply work with a model metadata file. So that's super useful if you're traveling and you're working on the go, or you just want to make some quick metadata changes to a model without wanting to wait for the Power BI Desktop instance to start up. That could be especially useful if you're working with very large semantic models with large volumes of data in them. There are features that help you automate repetitive tasks. We have a feature called C# scripting, which I'm also going to show you in the demo. C# scripts can be saved as macros that can be easily accessed within the tool. So this way you can actually extend Tabular Editor with your own functionality. It goes without saying that you have to be willing to write a little bit of C# code to make that work. I would say though that it isn't as daunting as it may sound because we have we provide a lot of examples on our website, and most of them can be easily modified to fit your need. So that's definitely something to look into if you want to become even more productive in your modeling work. Then we also have a best practice analyzer, which is a feature that sort of scans the model metadata in the background as you are working on the model and making changes, and it will inform you if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or if your model can be improved in various areas. It's also a very nice feature that I want to highlight in the demo. I see there's a question in the chat. I'll just finish this slide and then I'll get to your questions. Tabular Editor also, in my opinion, enables better integration with version control. So if you want to have your semantic model in some kind of version or source control, then Tabular Editor provides a file format, or it lets you save the semantic model into a file format that is better suited for version control integration. Specifically, we take the model metadata and split it up into several smaller files rather than having one large file. And this actually enables things like parallel development, reducing the risks of merge conflicts when multiple developers work on the same model at the same time. And last but not least, the application itself is super lightweight and fast, much faster than spinning up Power BI Desktop. Especially Tabular Editor 2 is incredibly lightweight, and I would say that's an absolute minimum that everyone doing semantic modeling in Power BI should be using Tabular Editor 2. But yeah, you'll see in a bit. So the question was, does Tabular Editor work with direct query connectivity mode when trying to work offline? Well, you could have a semantic model that is in direct query mode, and you will still be able to open the semantic model in Tabular Editor. Now, of course, if you're offline, it just means that you won't be able to query any of the data. So you can still work with the metadata. You can edit your DAX expressions, DAX measures, or you can arrange measures in display folders and apply descriptions and so on and so forth. But you won't be able to actually interact with the data in the model if you're working offline. So I'll get back to that in the demo, but then in that case, it doesn't really matter whether you're using direct lake, import, or a hybrid where you're mixing both of them, or even direct lake. You can work offline in all cases, regardless of the storage technology used by your specific model. So what's the catch to all of this? It may sound too good to be true. Well, normally I say Tabular Editor is not very beginner friendly, especially Tabular Editor 2 can be a bit difficult to get started with if you're new to semantic modeling. Specifically, the DAX editor in Tabular Editor 2 does not have any kind of DAX code assist, code completion, or syntax checking. So you need to be relatively proficient in writing DAX code if you are to get the full benefit of Tabular Editor 2. Also, there's no diagram view or no way to interact with the data in Tabular Editor 2. So that's also because the tool was designed with being offline. That was kind of when I started working on Tabular Editor 2 back in 2016, the idea was that it was just meant to be a tool that you would open and then use it to make quick changes to a semantic model file. So it was kind of designed with being offline in mind. Tabular Editor 3 fixes this issue. It has features that allow you to connect to the data and view the data, query the data, and so on. But it can still seem a bit overwhelming at first glance. It has a lot of features in it. So yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to. But I promise you that it'll pay off in the long run. And on that note, I would like to put your attention to a relatively new website we launched a couple of months ago called Tabular Editor Learn. You see the URL on the screen. This is our free interactive learning course. I think there are around 9 courses there right now. It says on this slide that there is 25 plus hours of content. In reality, it's probably more like 40 hours of content. There's a lot of content there. It's all free. And at the end, there's a free certification exam. Now, you don't necessarily need a license for Tabular Editor 3 to use or to access this training. Everyone can create an account and sign up. That's completely free. But some of the examples, some of the exercises in there will be beneficial to use Tabular Editor 3 for. And so for that reason, we recommend, so if you don't already have a license, then you could always request a free 30-day trial. If you already used the free 30-day trial in the past, send us an email and we'd be happy to renew you so you can get another 30 days for free to check out this learning material. So, what is the difference between Tabular Editor 3 and Tabular Editor 2? Most of all, it's just a matter of having more features. So basically having everything you need to do semantic modeling in a single tool. I call it a one-stop shop for semantic modeling. There are a lot of really premium features in there that have years of investment, years of development behind them. One of the reasons why we decided to go commercial is because this basically allows us to build up a dedicated team of developers. We can offer support and liability to big companies, and this way we can better guarantee like continuous updates and improvements. And we have, I would say, we launched the tool in 2021. So far it's been quite a good business for us. As I showed you on a previous slide, we have a pretty big team, I would say, working on this right now. So I definitely think we're headed in the right direction. It also seems like some companies might be a bit hesitant to pick up open source software, probably because they're afraid of things like not getting support and not getting assistance if something goes wrong. And for these types of companies, it seems like a commercial offering is a better fit. So yeah, if you're working in such a company, then go to your manager and tell them that you need a Tabular Editor 3 license. I would say though that since I also care about my status as a Microsoft MVP, I am fully committed to keeping Tabular Editor 2 up to date, fully supported, and it will remain free and open source forever. So you will never be forced to use Tabular Editor 3. Tabular Editor 2 will always be there as a free alternative. There was another question, does TE work with PBIP format? And the answer to that is a short yes, it does. Since the PBIP format introduced last summer, it's also called Power BI Developer Mode. In reality, the semantic model of a PBIP project folder is just the model.bim file, and that file format is one that Tabular Editor has supported since 2016. So absolutely, yes, we do support the PBIP format. All right, so here's a long list of features that we have in Tabular Editor 3. I don't want to go through all of them here on this slide. I do like to call out the DAX debugger. That's one of the things we're also going to see in the demo. There's also a link so you can see a full detailed feature, a matrix comparing Tabular Editor 2 and Tabular Editor 3. But the bottom line is that Tabular Editor 3 basically contains everything you need as a semantic model developer for building your model, for testing it, for deploying it, everything in one single tool. That's the idea. All right, so unless there are any other questions at this stage, I think we will jump into the demo. So for this first demo, let me start by closing this. This was from a preparation I did earlier. So basically, the first time you launch Tabular Editor, it's going to look something like this. So it's just an empty shell at this point. And that's when you start to perhaps get a bit overwhelmed by the user interface. If you've used Tabular Editor 2 in the past, you will immediately recognize some of these options, like you can open a model from a file. That's the offline mode I talked about earlier. Or you can open a model from a database. And a database in this case could be a local instance of analysis services, or it could be the Power BI XMLA endpoint, as I'm showing here. It could even be a local instance of Power BI Desktop running on your local machine. Then it would look like this. And this would be the equivalent to going into Power BI Desktop, going to the external tools ribbon, and then clicking on the Tabular Editor. So my mouse cursor is a little offset here, but that would be the same as clicking on the button here on the external tools ribbon. It would open up Tabular Editor with that model already loaded. So when I do that here, I connect, and then we get sort of this overview of the model in the so-called Tom Explorer. Immediately, you'll notice one additional feature here in Tabular Editor 3 that Power BI Desktop doesn't have, and that is the ability to group tables. So we have a concept here called table groups. So you can nicely arrange all of your tables. So put all of your fact tables into a facts table group, and all of your dimensions into a dimensions group, and so on and so forth. It's just a neat little trick to make it a bit easier to navigate the model if you have a ton of tables in there. Now, the way this actually works is that Tabular Editor simply writes an annotation down on the individual table object, specifying which table group it belongs to. But in the user interface, it's all just drag and drop. So if I wanted to have these tables in a different table group, I'll just drag them, rearranging them. And of course, I can undo all of these operations just by hitting Control-Z. So all of that is straightforward. Now, one nice demo that I often show people is the way I can replicate objects. So here, for example, I've spent a lot of time setting up a date table. You can see it has a huge DAX expression in here that defines all of the various fields within the date table, like the calendar column, the week column, ISO week, all of that stuff that you know when you build your date tables. One thing you will notice is that this DAX editor is extremely fast. So if I wanted to add some additional code here, I could do stuff like, let me see if I can navigate through all of these. So there's some interesting comments that have been added here. I'm not sure if I would do that if myself, but my point is that I can do stuff like typing some code, and you'll see the autocomplete pop-up suggesting variable names, measures, so on and so forth, things in general to make you more productive as you type your DAX code. And this works incredibly fast, regardless of the size of the DAX expression that you're working with. So even if you have a multi-thousand line DAX expression, I hope you don't, but even if you do, it will still be very snappy and work very fast. Now, you can also see this table that a lot of time has been spent setting up this date table with display folders. Probably some format strings have been assigned to many of the columns as well to make them look good. And there's a hierarchy here with the various fields built in. Now, let's say I need to replicate this table because I want to have like a role-playing date table with order date or due date, shipping date, whatever. Well, in that case, instead of having to build it all from scratch, I can simply just click on the table, Control-C followed by Control-V, and then I will immediately get a copy of this table, and it'll be set up in exactly the same way with the same fields, display folders, everything. We can even see that Tabular Editor detects that there's an error here somewhere, and that's because when it replicated the table, it just copied the calculated columns as they were, and you can see the DAX expression here. In this case, this calculated column is referring to the original date table. So we're actually discussing internally if we should fix up an expression such as this automatically when you are making changes. But luckily, it's quite easy to fix in this case, and then the error icon goes away, and we can see what we're building at now. So that's copy pasting. I can make more copies, and it's just lightning fast. They just pop up immediately. There's no downtime or anything like that. I can undo just as fast, clicking Control-Z to get rid of them once again. Another thing that you'll notice is, so right now I'm connected to my local instance of Power BI Desktop, and I haven't hit the save button yet. So if I switch over to Power BI Desktop, we can see that there's still only one date table, and that's because Tabular Editor basically works offline while you're making the changes. But as soon as I hit the save button, Control S, then that Tabular Editor says, please wait for a fraction of a second, and that's when it actually saves the changes that you made to the model back to the instance of analysis services that you are connected to. So in this case, it goes back to Power BI Desktop, and now we can see that the new table we added is showing here. Now, one thing to also be aware of is that Power BI Desktop will react to, so since we added a new calculated table outside Power BI Desktop, that table will not contain any data. So we can even see that if we go to this table, we can see, oh, so since it's I need to collapse this. Yeah, you can see that it doesn't contain any data right now, and that's because it's a calculated table. Power BI Desktop does this recalculation automatically on the fly as you make changes. That's both an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is that you'll see the little working on the spinner, and you'll have to wait for that to finish the calculation before you can move on. So the philosophy behind Tabular Editor is kind of different in that we don't do these automatic calculations or refreshes for you. You will have to manually invoke those. So in this case, I can do the same thing here. I can preview the table. I can see that it's empty. But if I want to, I can force a recalculation of the table when I'm ready to do that. So let's do that now. We click the button, and it says data refresh fail. And oh yeah, I forget. We get an error here, and I think it's because Power BI Desktop does not allow external tools to trigger refresh operations. So for this, in this example, you would have to go into Power BI Desktop and hit the refresh now button to get the data into this table. In general, whenever you make a change to a calculated column or a calculated table, you would need to do the same thing. So going back to Tabular Editor, we can see that now it has data. If, on the other hand, you instead of connecting to Power BI Desktop, if you are connected to the Power BI XML endpoint, or even an analysis services on-premises or Azure Analysis Service instance, then you would have full control over when these recalculations happen, and you can trigger the recalculations or the refresh operations from inside Tabular Editor, and they even run in the background, so you can keep working while the model is doing the recalculation. So there was a question here, is there an option to create the object in Power Query rather than DAX? So I assume the question in this case refers to the date table, which in my example was created using DAX. Well, we do have support for Power Query, and you can see that if you go into a partition on any given table, you can see the M expression that makes up the data that goes into this table. Now, we don't have a full-blown Power Query user interface like the one that you are used to from Power BI. So this assumes that you're going to type your Power Query expression by hand or your M expression by hand. But once you do that, however, we do have a way to sort of update the columns on the table based on the new M expression. And in fact, that's one of the first things I wanted to demo. So let me change pace a little bit and then show you how that's done. So let's say I'm creating a model from scratch. I'm creating a model that's going to live in Power BI. So that's a Power BI data set when I select it from this dropdown. I'm going to use a feature here called Workspace Database because I don't want to be working completely offline. I want Tabular Editor to connect to the Power BI service so that I have a place to actually load my data so I can test my measures as I build my model. So I'll go here. And then I need to connect. So we'll just call this demo 1. Click OK. So that's the workspace database that I will be continuously updating whenever I hit save inside Tabular Editor. So that since I'm using Power BI Premium per user, it takes a little while for the Power BI workspace to warm up. So here we go. So now I have an empty model, and I can start populating this model with tables. So in this case, I go here. I click Import Tables. And I have various options available for how I want to import these tables. Now, if this had been an Azure Analysis Services or on-premises SQL Server Analysis Service model, I would use one of these two options to define the data source. But since it's a Power BI model, I can use something called implicit data sources, where the data source is implicitly specified in the M expression. And the credentials are managed by the Power BI service. So I will connect to an Azure SQL database, and I think the name is no, that's not it. T3 SQL. So this is the SQL database from which I want to load the data. And I'll just connect using my credentials. Actually, that was the wrong one. I think I wanted this one instead. This one. Here we go. And next, I'm presented with a list of tables and views on this SQL instance, and I can just pick the ones that I want to load. So let's say I want to load my orders table. I want to load customers and products. I can also get a preview of the data in these objects if I want to. I click Next and Finish. And now you see Tabular Editor has added these tables to the model. It hasn't refreshed the tables yet, so it's just the metadata that I'm working with right now. So the definition of the model and the tables that I want to put into the model. You can also see that it's generated an M expression for each of these. So let's say that I wanted to change this M expression somewhat. For example, let's say I only wanted to keep certain columns. I would probably do something like output and then type table dot, is it select columns or something like that? I forget the exact syntax for M, but this is just going back to the question I received earlier. I think it's something like this. Yeah, here we go. I just wanted to see the documentation for the M query. So basically, I need to specify a list of columns that I want to include. So it's something like this. So let's say I just want to keep the billing date, just as an example, the billing date column and the local currency column. And then what we output is this. So now I've changed this, and you'll see the list of columns imported on the table is unchanged. But the moment I right-click on this and choose Update Table Schema, then I ask Tabular Editor to evaluate the M expression and figure out what are the resulting columns coming out of that M expression. And as you can see here, it tells me that I need to remove all of these columns. So I click OK to that, and we can see now just the billing date and local currency columns are left. So let me change this back. Let me get rid of this. Actually, I can just undo the whole thing, or I can get rid of this, type data again in my M expression, and then do another update table schema. And you can see now it's going to add back all of the columns that we removed previously. So this is the sense in which we can actually edit the Power Query, in that Tabular Editor will automatically detect the columns that result from a given Power Query expression. All right, so let me hit save. Since this is the first time I'm saving the model, I get this prompt asking me what type of format I want to save the model in. So you can see we have a few options here. We have the model.bim file, which is compatible with Visual Studio and also with Power BI projects, PBIP. That was the question that came in earlier. An alternative that we recommend currently is to use something called database JSON, which is a format that's compatible with all versions of Tabular Editor, and it's a format that is much better suited for version control integration. The third option right now is a format that is in preview. It's called TMDL, TMDL, and it's a format that is supported by Microsoft. Going forward, I believe that TMDL will also be the format used by PBIP projects, although that's not available yet. But at some point, I'm sure we are going to see that. So that would also be an option. For now, I would say don't use it. It's still a preview feature, so there could be breaking changes introduced when new versions are released. In this example, I'll just go with database JSON so we can see what that looks like. Let me put a new folder here called Demo1, and we save the model there. And then what happens is if we go to to this folder just to show you what it looks like. You can see I have a set of smaller files here. For example, under tables, I have one folder for each table in my model. And within each of these, I have separate files for the table itself, for the partitions, and for the columns on the model. And if I had defined any DAX measures, they would also appear as separate files. So using this format and saving all of this in Git or some other version control environment is much easier, because when changes are made, you can then easily determine which objects have been affected by the change. And if multiple developers are working on this model simultaneously, then odds are that they're not going to work on the same files, and thereby we can avoid merge conflicts. So now that I've saved it, let's see if I can actually see the data in this table. So if I hit preview data, this comes up, but as you can see, it's empty right now. And again, going back to what I said earlier, this is because Tabular Editor does not try to be clever on your behalf and try to refresh things as you're working, because such operations can potentially take a lot of time to complete, depending on the data volumes involved. So instead, we rely on the user manually triggering these operations. So in this case, we can start a refresh. We can do it either at the table level, we can even do it at individual partition levels, or we can do it for the entire model. So for now, let's just do a full refresh on the model. You can see the refresh now runs in the background, and as it is refreshing, we can keep working. So we can add, let's say we wanted to add a measure to this one. We wanted to add a number of customers measure, so we can just do that, and we can type the DAX expression for that measure as the model is refreshing. So something like this. We can also save, although do note that since the workspace database is currently busy refreshing data, when we hit save, the workspace database will not be synchronized. So when I hit save, I'm only going to save my changes back to my file system, the folder that I chose earlier. So I will need to save again once the refresh operation is complete. That's also what this this warning message here is saying. So now I forget how big these tables are. I think the orders table might be relatively large, so it could be a while for this operation to complete. But you can see we can track the progress. Here we can see that the customers table seems to have finished. The products table has finished as well. Now the reason that I'm still not able to view any data when I actually preview the contents of this table is because this refresh operation is running in a transaction, meaning that the entire refresh operation needs to succeed before we can actually query the state of the model after the refresh is finished. All right, so while it's doing its thing, I can always just spin up a new instance of Tabular Editor and use that to show you a different demo that I've prepared. So let's see if we can get that up and running. Yeah, here we are. So this is just another instance of Tabular Editor that I'm using now. So in this demo, I just want to connect to an existing model that was populated with data earlier today. And this is specifically the space parts data set that I mentioned earlier. And I think it's this one I wanted to show you. Yeah, here we go. So one of the common issues people have when they're writing DAX code is that it sometimes can be difficult to have the DAX calculations return the expected results. So we've probably all been there. We're writing some DAX code, and for some reason it just doesn't calculate the expected value. We're getting something different than what we expect, and there can be a ton of reasons for that, and it can be very time consuming to figure out what's going on and why we're not seeing the right results. Now, Tabular Editor 3 has a tool called the DAX debugger, which helps you figure out what's going on, and that's what I want to show you next. So there are two ways to start the DAX debugger. So one option is to launch what we call a pivot grid. So there's a feature here where you can open this pivot table. It's very similar to pivot tables in Excel, where you can then go in, add some measures, and add some columns as well. Like let's say we want something like calendar year month, and then you get this information on the screen. Let's take a different one. Let me use this one instead. So you can slice and dice your data. You can group by columns as well. As I said, it's very similar to the Excel pivot tables, letting you inspect the data, slicing and dicing and filtering. Now, in this case, for example, we probably noticed that for August 2022, it seems that the numbers are too low. And now, especially if we sort this in a different direction, we can see that the numbers seems to be too low. I'll show you another example here where we have a DAX query, so something like summarize columns, and then let's go with calendar month, year, and also year. That was this other one I wanted to include, this one, and then we take the what is it called? Oh, actually, I have it saved here. Let me use this instead. This one. Yeah, so this is a query, and this could also be a query that we captured from Power BI Desktop. Since in Power BI Desktop we have this feature called Performance Analyzer, and in here you can hit Start Recording, and then you can choose to refresh visuals, and then on each visual you can get the DAX query that the visual generates behind the scenes. So you could just as well have copied the DAX query from inside Power BI Desktop, and then moved over to Tabular Editor, pasted the query, and then you can execute it from in here, and you can see the values. So in this demo, I'm going to scroll down to August 2022, and that's where we notice that the value here seems to be too low. At least the business might have expected this value to be higher. So what we do here is we start the debugger, and what I just want to show is that we can start it both from the DAX query that we have here, or we could start it from the pivot table. Both these tools have this feature where you can start the DAX debugger. So going back here, let me debug into this cell. And then what happens is that we bring up all of the DAX expressions that make up this calculation. In this case, it's the daily average order lines last 4 weeks, which in turn depends on the net order lines measure. So that's why we see only these two measures inside this document. So the debugger shows us what the value is of the current expression that's highlighted in this particular filter context. So the filter context is shown over on the right side of the screen. We can see that there's a filter on calendar month year, and also on the year month number. And this filter arises from the fact that when I started the debugger, I did it on a particular cell in this query result, and this cell has these two values as the filter context, basically, of this particular cell. So going back to the debugger, I can use the keyboard shortcuts to dive into the expression. I can view the full expression in the call tree if I want to do that. I can double click somewhere to navigate. I can also use the keyboard shortcuts to jump back and forth. And the cool thing, while I'm doing this, I can see all of the intermediate calculations. So in this case, for example, where I'm dividing total lines by number of days, I get all of the intermediate calculations that make up this calculation shown here. And I can even on the watch, let me just move this a little bit. In this window, I can type any DAX expression and have that evaluated in the same filter context. So in this particular case, it's interesting to note that the number of days here is 28. But the problem in this case is that my fact table does not have data for all of the days of August. And one way I can check that is I can type max and then go directly to the orders table and look at the order date column. And sure enough, this shows that the maximum date for which I have orders in my fact table is on the 19th of August. So this could explain why my expected or why the result of this calculation is too low. It's simply because I'm dividing all of my order lines by 28, which is the number of days in the month, and this is wrong because I only have data up until the 19th of the month. So yeah, so someone should probably look into fixing the DAX expression to take care of that. But the point is, you can use the DAX debugger to go through all of this, to examine the intermediate calculations, even type in other expressions that you wish to examine in the same filter context that you are currently looking at. And as you move into the expression, for example, if I move into the inner part of this calculate statement, I can see the filter context getting modified. For example, here I'm overriding the filter context on the date table with a dates and period filter. So basically the last 28 days that was specified here, and that's where the 28 days comes from that we saw earlier. So super powerful tool that can save you a lot of time when you're trying to debug DAX calculations that do not give you the expected results. So let's switch back to the model we started working on earlier, because I think that one has finished refreshing. Yes, you can see it's finished now. It took a little over 3 minutes, and we now have 17 million rows in our orders table. Just to confirm that, we can preview the order table from in here, and sure enough, we should see some data, and we see that it has a total of 17 million rows. Now, unlike Power BI Desktop, I can actually preview multiple tables at a time, and I can even move them to different monitors if I wanted to see the context of both tables at the same time. I can also, as this user interface is completely configurable, I can move this anywhere. I can open a DAX script, I can open a DAX query or pivot table. So basically you can arrange the user interface any way you like to make sure that you have all of the information that you need available. Now, when we create a model such as this, the next thing we would typically need to do is to define the relationships between the tables. Tabular Editor does not try to be smart and automatically create the relationships for you the way Power BI Desktop does. So instead, you will have to use our diagram tool to define these relationships. So in this case, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping between the various tables. So let's see here, we have the product, and the product key should be here somewhere as well. So we just drag and drop, and there we go. So now we have the relationships. We hit save. Oh, I don't want to save the diagram. Let me just get rid of this. I want to save the model. So I hit save once again. And now if we go back to the folder structure on disk, you can now see that we have a relationships folder that defines the relationships between these tables. Next up, I would probably want to add some calculated measures to this, and I think I already added one for customers. Let's create one for orders as well, number of orders, and we just type a simple DAX expression, count rows orders, and we hit save. And now maybe we want to test if this works. So we drag number of orders into the pivot table. That seems to work fine. But then when we slice this by, let's say we try to slice by color, we get an error. And I'm sorry that this is in Danish. That's because the connection string I'm using to the Power BI service specifies that it needs to use Danish. But basically, the error message here says that the relationships between the orders table and the products table does not contain data because it needs to be refreshed. And then once again, that's something that I need to do manually. In this case, I can just do a calculate refresh on the entire model. It takes just a few seconds to complete, and as soon as that's finished, we can see the data and the relationship actually working and kicking in. Now I could continue adding measures one by one, like I did here, but I don't want to do that because I'm lazy. I want to automate the process of adding these measures, and for that I'm going to use the DAX script feature. Now, no, sorry, not DAX script, but C# script. So C# scripts are also available in Tabular Editor 2. So if you're just looking for ways to optimize your workflow and automate as much as possible, then you should definitely look into Tabular Editor 2 as well, because it has this capability also. On our documentation site, you will find an article here called Useful Script Snippets. This one contains a lot of scripts that are commonly used in Tabular Editor. And the very first one here is in fact the one we need, create measures from columns. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it into the C# editor in Tabular Editor. And without going into too much detail, basically what this script does is it loops through the currently selected columns. So if I select columns like net order quantity, net order value, and let's also take probably not a lot of other columns on this table that it makes sense to aggregate. So let's just stick to these two. And then as soon as I run the script, two things happened. First of all, those two columns that I selected have now been hidden. It's always a best practice to hide columns that are used in aggregations. And at the same time, two new measures were added to the table. And all these measures does is basically just aggregate. So basically taking the sum of the underlying column. Now, this demo would have been a lot more impressive if I had like 10 measures that I would create in one go. It would be just as fast. And the cool thing is that whenever you make a change through a script, you can always undo it. So if I hit Control Z, it will just roll the model back to how it looked before I ran the script. So now it seems like nothing has happened, which means I'm completely free to experiment with this script and do all kinds of things. So just to show you that it actually works, even though it's completely nonsensical to aggregate a lot of these columns, let me try to run it again, but this time selecting a few more columns. So I hit run, and now we can see just like that, I get 10 measures created. Now we can go one step further. Let's say we wanted to create time intelligence variations of each of these measures. Well, there's a script for that as well, and it looks like this. Now, this particular script assumes that we already have a date table in the model, which is something I did not add yet. So these measures are not going to work. But in any case, we can still generate them. So once again, I just select some measures. And then when I run the script, it's going to create a ton of additional measures. You can see all of these measures have the little red cross on them, which indicates that there's an error in the DAX expression. And for sure, in this case, the error is that, so this one depends on another measure that has an error, which in turn depends on another measure. And the issue in this case is that I don't have the date table in my model. So that's called out here. And speaking of errors, you can always get a full list of all of the errors that you see in your model. Double-clicking on any of them will take you to where the culprit is, so you can fix the error on your DAX expression. That's also a little known but very, very useful feature of Tabular Editor 3. One last thing to note about these scripts is that they can be saved as macros. So if you hit the little save button up here, you can give it a name. I could call it demo, create time intelligence measures. And then when I hit OK, this script will now be integrated into Tabular Editor. So the next time so whenever I launch Tabular Editor from now on, I can just right-click on these measures, and then I will have the script available as a right-click action here. So basically, I can get the same effect as running the script, but now it's integrated into Tabular Editor's user interface, and you can do exactly the same thing in Tabular Editor 2. So this is what I talked about earlier about actually extending the functionality of Tabular Editor with your own custom behavior. Someone even made a game that's Kurt Bueller, who's also very active online. I don't remember if unfortunately, I don't have his. Yeah, I don't have it here, unfortunately. But if you go to his blog, you will see that he actually made a little C# game that runs inside Tabular Editor. It's a snake game, basically. So that's all possible thanks to the mighty power of C#, and the way that you can interact with the object model and adding new objects, changing objects, and so on. It's just a very, very powerful productivity feature. So the last thing I wanted to show you is the best practice analyzer. So you can see here at the bottom of the screen, it says I have 75 best practice issues. So if I click this button, I'm being taken over to the best practice analyzer view, where I get a list of all of the issues that the best practice analyzer detected. So some of these are pretty straightforward, like you should never summarize numeric columns. So for example, on my products table, I have a column called weight, which which probably contains the weight of the product that I'm selling. And I'm not interested in users accidentally aggregating this column in Power BI Desktop. So I don't want my report creators, report authors to drag this column into a matrix and sum the values inside of it. So for that reason, I should specify the summarize by property. I should set it to none because this way I indicate to Power BI Desktop that this column should not be aggregated, but we can still use it as a filter or inside a slicer. And as soon as I change that, so if I set this to none, we should see the best practice analyzer update, or at least I can force an update, and now we can see that it's no longer being shown. I can also have the best practice analyzer generate a fix script, which will basically spit out a C# script that will do this for me automatically. So if I run this, we can see now this entire issue has disappeared. So not all of the best practice issues can be automatically fixed, but for those where this is an option, then you will see this as this option available here to either generate the fix script or apply the fix immediately. So this way, the best practice analyzer can help you build better quality models. One last thing I need to let you know regarding the best practice analyzer is that when you first download and install Tabular Editor, you will not see any best practice rules in here. That's because we don't ship any standard rules with Tabular Editor. So the ones I have here are some that I've taken from Microsoft's Power BI blog. So if you search for something like best practices Power BI, I think it's one of the first best practice rules, maybe Power BI. Then it's one of the first blog posts that appear. It's written by Michael Kowalski, who's a senior program manager at Power BI. And he has a link to all of the rules that he uses and instructions on how to load them inside Tabular Editor. But the idea here is that you can also create your own best practice rules. So you can define naming conventions, for example, if your company dictates that columns must be named in a certain way or whatnot, or that you should always specify certain things in the description, then you can add your own custom rules to the best practice analyzer and have them analyze your model as you are working on it. So unfortunately, I'm running out of time. There's just 1 minute left, so I think I'm going to end the demo here, and then I'm happy to stay around and answer questions. But other than that, you can find a lot of additional information on our website, on our documentation page. I also highly encourage you to check out the Tabular Editor Learn that I mentioned earlier, and participate in the discussion on our GitHub community forum that's available for everyone.
Wow, Daniel, where did that time go? I can't believe it's 7 o'clock. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I see there were a few issues in the chat a few questions in the chat that I probably missed.
I think,
so if I understand.
Yeah, I think Bernat and I answered most of them, but if you want to scroll through, I'm also going to put a link to my blog post to my video on debugging in DAX, because I got David to spend an hour with me at SQL Bits last year going through it. So I'll pop that in because that's quite helpful as well.
Yes, very good. Yeah, this demo definitely has more details on that. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right? So
I know.
that's
like
that's
7
1 hour.
o'clock. Really, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's such a fabulous tool to have. The free version, Tabular Editor 2, with the scripting and the best practice analyzer. And even for me, I just remember when I first started using it, the fact that I could pull out my tables and put them in a separate window, so I could have the tables, because I'm a visual person. I could see the data and then write my scripts and then look at the relationship. So you can almost visualize your whole model in entirety as you're doing specific things within the model. And
just this multi-monitor feature alone makes it worth it, in my opinion, because so many times you need all of this context, all of this information when you're building your model, and there's just not enough real estate on a single monitor to have all this information available. So definitely.
Absolutely. And I just remember, and I didn't realize until I worked out that I could do it, how much it annoyed me that I couldn't do it in PBI Desktop. It was almost like, that's what because you're flicking and flicking and flicking, and then just to have it all there, it was just brilliant. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions for a few minutes if there are anyone else who have something on their mind. Or but other than that, I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. So if you can't use it at work, you can download it as well, can't you? As a where you don't need admin access, Daniel. So if you've got a
all right. Yeah, we have a portable version of both Tabular Editor 2 and Tabular Editor 3 where you don't need to actually install it, but it just runs as a standalone application. But I think the Oliver's question was regarding licensing, and for sure we allow multiple installations on a single license, so you can install. You can have one installation at home and one installation on your work machine using the same license key. If you need additional installations other than the ones that we provide, normally it's 2 or 3 installations you get per license, but you're always welcome to reach out if you need more. Then we can increase the number of installations available.
Oh, I've been paying for 2 licenses. I'm going to be reaching out to you and Soren for sure.
Yeah, that's no, definitely. I mean, the idea is that one person, one license, and then we want to enable you to have it available on as many machines as you need it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, perfect. Any more questions before I let Daniel go and I go to the pub? No? It's not yoga tonight, it's pub time. But it is absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic tool. If you haven't had a go at using Tabular Editor 3, you can start with Tabular Editor 2, and then once you start, getting sort of used to it and you want more, then you can try Tabular Editor 3 for a month, and you won't go back. Just if it saves you an hour, then it's paid for itself, an hour a month.
Exactly.
It's the way I always look at it.
Yeah.
You can tell I bill by time, can't you? So yeah, have to save. Okay, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. I will stop recording now.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
And